And welcome back to Blockchain Radio. I'm Pierre Bourque in Ottawa, Canada, in conversation today with David Gitonga. He is the founder and content lead at Bitcoin Kenya, a fantastic website that oversees and overlooks everything that's happening in the Bitcoin blockchain world in Kenya. David, welcome to Blockchain Radio.
Thank you so much, Pierre. Glad to be here.
I have been following you. Our own Twitter feed follows a number of African-based Bitcoin and blockchain space organizations and individuals, and it's been great fun to watch what's been going on in the Bitcoin blockchain space in Kenya. You're the founder and content lead of this website, and I'll mention the web address for our listeners who want to follow along. It's bitcoinke, so KE for Kenya, bitcoinke.io. So tell us how you came to get involved into this space, David, and what led you to do what you're doing now with this website.
Oh, yeah. So I started off in the space back in 2015. I had been contracted by a company a while back called Bitpesa. So they were running a number of campaigns. So I was doing a lot of their video work online. So actually, that's how I got to know about Bitcoin and the blockchain and the space. Then from there, I just kept learning, just kept attending events and meetups, and I got to meet other founders in the space. A lot of companies at that time were also coming into Kenya. So I got to attend a lot of these events, and that's how I eventually got comfortable in the space. And here I am with bitcoinke.
Oh, that's very cool. You know, when I talk with individuals such as yourself from different points in the world, David, and I've had the pleasure in recent days with our radio programming at Blockchain Radio to talk to people in Moscow, Russia, people in South Korea and Australia, and the United States, of course, and Europe. There's a sense of real genuine excitement about what's going on in the space. It's palpable, if you know what I mean. I mean, you can taste it almost. You can feel it. When you're talking to the participants and when you see it. Is it that same sense of excitement and activity from where you are in Kenya right now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's something interesting about this space. There's something interesting about a new technology that looks to change how things are done at the moment. And I guess for me, it was the whole aspect of decentralization, changing how things are done, because we are used to living in a space or a community where one company or one brand owns all this data, controls how we interact with this data, and we rarely have access to that kind of data. So when I got to learn about the blockchain, it kind of excited me. Initially, I started by learning about cryptocurrencies. And I've always been passionate about the web. I've always been passionate about using the web for the common good. So that was a really a really good selling point for me. So I guess that's how I fell in love with it, and ever since it's been a blast all the way since then.
What's the community like in Kenya? I recognize you're in Nairobi, here in Ottawa, Canada, the capital of Canada, and you're in Nairobi, the capital of Kenya. Here, we have a number of regular meetups where people get together who are in the space and they just like to talk about what's going on. Are there similar activities that are or conferences that are happening in your country?
Oh yeah, so what's happening in Nairobi especially is that we are seeing a real interest in the space. So we don't have as many meetups as we would want to have. But what's been happening recently, actually over the last couple of months, is that we are seeing more and more of these meetups coming up. We have communities now. So we have, for example, we have a very big EOS community here. We have an Ion community as well. So more and more of these meetups are happening. It never used to be like that before. For example, when I got into the space a couple of years ago, meetups were rare, but that's all changing right now as more people get into the space. And I guess this has also been fueled largely by the government's involvement into the space. So recently, the Kenyan government set up what's called a blockchain task force. So the task force is mandated to look into the space and see how these new emerging technologies can be used to drive the what the company calls the Big Four agenda, which looks to put Kenya among the developed nations by the year 2030. So that has also fueled a lot of interest in the space, and that's why the enthusiasm has really grown to where it is right now.
So you're saying that Kenya has, as a government, as a nation, has embraced the potential of what blockchain represents to the world, and wants to use it and incorporate it as it develops itself towards greater prosperity for the country.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we realize that Kenya is among the few, possibly the only country in Africa that is looking deeply into the blockchain technology. So with by setting up the blockchain task force, then the government, in other words, was saying that we are really interested in looking into this technology and adopting. So the minister for ICT has really been pushing for adoption. We are seeing more meetups by the government as well, trying to bring stakeholders into the space, and just trying to start up conversations around the space. So that has also contributed to a greater extent the enthusiasm and the growth of blockchain.
As I go to your website, David, bitcoinke.io, I see an ad for something called the Africa Blockchain Conference that's happening next week. Is that going to be a big event? Will there be participants from various countries across Africa and perhaps even elsewhere from around the world?
Oh yeah, the African Blockchain Conference is happening in Kampala, Uganda. That's our next door neighbor country, and it's looking to be one of the largest blockchain conferences in Africa this year. And a lot of the people that are expected to come are some of the top leaders from Africa. We have some former presidents from some of the countries in Africa. We have ministers from different countries across Africa. From Kenya, we have the chairman of the blockchain task force. He's leading the blockchain task force here in Kenya. He'll also be giving a keynote address there. And we also have a number of invited guests from across Canada, the United States, that are coming to either represent their companies or just to give an outlook or provide some insight around the blockchain space.
Very nice. You had mentioned how Kenya has embraced blockchain. I think a lot of people see Kenya as a blockchain hub for Africa. Would you be able to give us a sense, for those of us listening from elsewhere, give us a sense of some of the issues that blockchain will be the participants and their various companies and activities, either in the for-profit or the non-profit side. What are some of the major issues within Africa that blockchain will be positioned to address by participants?
Well, as you may or may not be aware, Africa still faces some huge problems or challenges that may not be common to maybe first world countries or the Western world. And some of these are things like corruption and transparency. So those are some of the biggest challenges that the blockchain is being looked at helping to solve. So, for example, right here in Kenya, we have a big problem around elections. There's a lot of election malpractice taking place. There's also a lot of corruption happening, and the blockchain has been looked at as a solution to some of these challenges. So a lot of the solutions that are coming up are around offering solutions around these problems. So we are having some companies, either locally or even from around the world, just coming here to see how they can implement the blockchain to solve some of these problems. So I guess that's one of the major challenge that we could see blockchain coming in and trying to solve it.
That's fantastic. The world has become much smaller because of the internet. You said at the beginning that the web was one area of social activity that greatly appealed to you, and here you are. You're providing a news platform, a communication tool that's valuable to people who want to know what's going on around Africa, but also around the world in the blockchain space. And so you become your own hub. You've become a hub, David. I would imagine you're providing mission critical information to a lot of organizations that are trying to grow and trying to understand where they might fit in terms of need, but also in terms of competition. Is it a collaborative? Do you get a sense that the community in Kenya and by extrapolation across the various countries that you're in dialogue with, is there a broader sense of collaboration amongst participants, or is there already a bit of competition that's starting to set in?
I would say there's a bit of both. There's a bit of both because for one, when it comes to collaboration, I'm seeing a lot of startups looking to offer solutions, not just in the countries that they are based in, but they're also trying to reach out to other African countries because the issues that face one African country are more or less the same that are facing another country. So, for example, what we face here in Kenya is pretty much the same challenges that maybe our next door country like Uganda or Tanzania are facing. So, a solution for our country here would pretty much be the same solution, maybe that would resolve the same problem in Tanzania. So I would say collaboration is happening. At least I know one of a blockchain accelerator here in Kenya is training a team of developers from Zimbabwe. So to help them come up with a solution for their country. So those are some of the collaborative efforts that I'm seeing happening. In terms of competition, I would say currently we are still working under siloed environments. So we still don't have a lot of interactions as we would expect, where companies are sharing data, they're sharing information that would help them provide a much better solution. So I guess from that aspect, I would say I'm not sure if it's because of the competitive nature of these startups or it could be something else, but that's how the situation is at the moment.
As I'm listening to you, David, I sense a lot of promise, a lot of hope, a lot of optimism, and of course the enthusiasm that underlines it and is propelling things forward. Let me ask you this by way perhaps of our last question here. And it's just an observation as I was listening to you, but here we are talking. I'm in Canada right now. You're in Kenya. But our listeners, the people who are listening to us right now, maybe pretty much anywhere in the world, what would you want them to think about in of what's happening in Kenya in terms of getting them in their respective activities? And it'll be a broad cross section of the blockchain ecospace. But what would you want to say about Kenya to them to draw their attention into Kenya to take a look at it closer and to include Kenya in terms of how they themselves grow their international business?
Well, what I can say is I think Kenya is turning out to be the blockchain hub for Africa. And I say that for a number of reasons. For one is because we are seeing a lot of interest, even among regulators here, in that they want to see the space grow. But at the same time, they also realize there needs to be regulation around the space. So actually, in the last couple of months, there's been a lot of talk around regulation, but also regulation that does not curtail innovation. So at least that's a huge step when in the blockchain space. And also, I would say there's a lot happening around the education areas around the blockchain. We have a number of communities that are organizing events and also trying to gather a developer community and also build enthusiasm around the space. I've talked to a number of startups and entrepreneurs from across Africa, and all of them, I think, are very positive about what's happening in the space around here in Kenya. They say Kenya seems to be better positioned. We seem to be more ready to adopt this technology, and we are more welcoming. So actually, in the last couple of months, we've had a number of companies, run a number of meetups around here. We've had EOS run a number of meetups here. We've also gotten Ion, who are also based in Canada. So a lot of these companies coming here also sends out a positive message around about the environment here in Kenya, and we are hoping to see more companies come over and do take on similar roles of maybe running meetups or just building a community around here.
Excellent. David Gitonga, the founder of bitcoinke.io, fantastic website, lots of information. By way of closing out, David, if listeners want to get in touch with you, is your email address on your website, or do you have a Twitter handle you want to let us have?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they can get in touch with us at info@bitcoinke.io. Our Twitter handle is really simple. It's @bitcoinke. So if you want to reach out to us, or if you're looking to learn more about the space here in Kenya, we are always putting out articles and content and even a lot of video content around the space. So feel free to check us out.
Excellent, David. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Real education and very exciting to hear what's going on in Kenya. David Gitonga, thanks for joining us today. And let's make a point of checking in with each other from time to time. Love to hear how things develop from your end.
Okay, thank you for having me.
All right, thanks very much. And that's it. I'm Pierre Bourque. This is Blockchain Radio.